This film wrote itself. This film wrote itself. This film entered my life in the most unorthodox way possible. In 1997, the roots were in Tokyo, Japan, and our translator, marveling at my afro, correctly and wisely assumed that I was a fan of the institution known as Soul Train. She then says that we should have dinner at the Soul Train Cafe, which is basically this restaurant that has a bunch of soul archives playing all over the monitors as you eat. And for about 5 to 10 minutes, a clip of Sly and the Family Stone came on the monitors, and I had no context whatsoever, so I didn't know that I was watching 10 minutes of the Harlem Cultural Festival. I just assumed that it was like a European jazz festival that they happened to be playing at. 20 years later, at the Tonight Show backstage, I get where these two gentlemen have this this mystical footage of so-called Black Woodstock that happened at the same time as other Woodstock, quote, other Woodstock. I instantly didn't believe it because, you know, that's the type of music snob I was. Like, how dare you try to put me on the spot introducing something to me that I don't know about? Like, how do I not know about this? And I'm the almighty Oz of music information. 300,000 people in Harlem and I don't know about it. It never happened. And they brought the proof that it did happen. And that starts the journey of me accepting the fact that I now hold history in my hands.
Are you really ready? Are you ready to listen to all the beautiful black voices, the beautiful black feeling, the beautiful black waves moving in beautiful air? Are you ready, black people? Are you ready?
If you ever see the moment in a movie where a person could go from total arrogance to be an absolute infant, like I went from a giant to like instant silence of, oh, whoa, this is real. And I gotta say that it took a good 4 months not for them to convince me, but for me to tell myself that I had the wherewithal to tell the story, that I deserved to tell the story. And everyone knew that I was a director except for me. And it took that long for me to finally accept, like, okay. Only because, like, I'm the person that's also inside the movie theater whispering, much to the chagrin of the patrons, that, you know, that music cue was wrong. There's no way that happened this year because this song came out in 1980. Shh, okay, I'm sorry. Like, that's me. And so I'll say that for me, having 40 hours of footage, I didn't want this to be a task or a job because, you know, oftentimes I'm in a position in which many things that were my passion suddenly turn into a job. I figured out a real fun way to sort of absorb the information without making it a job. We had like 40-hour MPEGs made up, and I had it on constant loop. So basically I turned every monitor into my house and every monitor in my office and in my studio. I turned it into like an art installation where this thing would play constantly on loop 24 hours, never turned it off. Even when I was asleep, I'd wake up in the middle at 5 a.m. to go to the bathroom and just look and see oh, that's interesting, okay. Good. And you know, like I just kept it on constant loop for 5 months in a row. When something reached out to me or grabbed me in the heart, what I call a goosebump moment, when I had goosebumps, when I had 30 of them, then I felt like, okay, now we have a moment.
6 weekends with major artists.
The Panthers were the security and kids were sitting up on the trees. I was nervous. I didn't expect a crowd like that. Something very important was happening. It wasn't just about the music.
You know, I maintain that when you're in a zone of creativity, that you should really sit in silence. Silence is golden. It's not just a cliche that your English teacher says before you get assigned detention. Like it's for real. We live in a time in which if there's ever 2 or 3 seconds that go by, we instantly, the temptation to not fill that space up and start entertaining ourselves, it's hard to resist. But I now know more than ever how golden and how important it is for complete silence to sort of penetrate the air, and for you to, that's when you'll hear the ideas. That's when the muses, whoever, like your 8th chakra or whatever, that's when they speak to you. I think in the beginning I was like, well, I guess I'm just going to curate the perfect concert series, just like all those other great soul documentaries in the past, like Wattstax, Soul to Soul, Soul Power, Save the Children, like all these concert films of soul artists at festivals. And I thought, okay, as long as I can match the canon of those great films, I'm okay. But then something weird happened, which was that, you know, we were editing and filming this thing in the middle of a revolution. And I'm certain that once 2040 comes along, or 2050, we will look back at this time period as the new American Revolution, or the art revolution, or it's going to get a title. Like, we're living in it now, so we can't really get a perspective of it because the script's being written right now. But during March, April, May, especially June of 2020, it wasn't lost on us that the very exact things that we were showing in 1969 were happening 50 years later, verbatim. And, you know, for all the worrying I had about, like, how am I going to connect with millennials and Gen Z on this movie? Like, how am I going to emotionally impact them? That was my answer. The universe is like, well, they're going to see the exact mirroring of 1969, 2019, 1970, 2020, 1971, 2021. Like, it's paralleling each other.
1969 was a change of era in the black community.
The styles were changing.
Music was changing.
And revolution was coming together.
We are a new people. We are a beautiful people.
One could say that as the world was changing, this changed me as a director. But I mean, I gotta be really transparent and try not to be as dramatic about it, but this really changed me as a human being. I entered this thing trying to duck and dodge responsibility and, you know, just let me be a producer and slap my name on it. And, you know, I'll do interviews. I'll be your talking head. Like, this project more than any other project. And, you know, I've done non-drumming things before in the creative space. I've written books. I've taught class. I've even dabbled in stand-up comedy that the world will never know about. But it's like, of all of the proverbial Thelma and Louise cliff jumps, this one was the hardest to do. And, you know, I entered it with fear. Like, what if other directors, like, what if Spike Lee and Ava DuVernay, like, laugh at me? What if this fails? What if this fails? And, like, I'd never go into my album like, what if this fails? Or, you know, or anything. I've never been so defensive. This process was more than an education on how to make my first film or how to be a better director. Like, this really taught me, everything about this film taught me how to be a better human being, and communicating with my staff, and my relationship with the artist, and me discovering, like, watching Tony Lawrence have the audacity to throw a festival with no experience whatsoever, a first-time festival thrower, and the nerve of him thinking that this is important enough to get on movies. And even though he's not here with us, yes, 50 years later, even his manifestation from back then is coming true right now. So this taught me a lot about the power of intent and manifesting and living in my heart and not talking myself out of things. The voice in our head, we're so mean to ourselves. Like, we say things to ourselves that we would never let another human being say to us. And so just those 9-10 months of silence and solitude that I had quarantining really allowed me to sit with my thoughts. And this is why I believe like the film turned out the way that it did, because this is also the evolution of Ahmir Thompson as well, you know.